Live sets, kind of my thing. Alright, so the past few live sets that I've had have never really been the same, nor was the gear that I took. I would constantly switch out things like my core between the MPC 1000 or the Octatrack. I would change drum machines between the Circuit, Diggy, PR1, Modular once in a while. And for bassline stuff, that would come down to the Avalon, Modular, Siren, whatever. And of course all the random filler stuff. Now, this is great and all to keep things interesting for myself, but when it came to this show, I was realizing something pretty important, which is that the crowd should always come first. And I know you're probably wondering, well, duh, haven't they always come first at all your other shows as well? What's the main difference with this one? So here's the thing, at those other shows, I was pretty comfortable because they were a bit more like synth nerd, synth focused shows. So I knew I could kind of, in a sense, wing it, take a bunch of gear and just have some fun on stage. And we'd all kind of, talk about gear. That's the whole point of the show. But this show was way more of a let's have fun and dance and let's just party show. So my mindset was fully on the crowd, but I felt like this was a bit at my expense because I wanted it to just be really good music all night long. So being a bit selfish, I had to kind of find this balance of what can I do to have fun and perform, but also have a reliably good sounding show the entire set. Okay, let's reel it back and start at the beginning. I set up a blank table and started connecting gear and trying to play 30 minutes at a time and seeing what worked, what didn't work, what was fun, what wasn't fun. And I just continued to throw gear at the problem, and I started to get stressed out, and I just couldn't find what I wanted, which was good sounds, reliably improvisable music, and just fun. And I could talk about this struggle all day long, but I don't want to take up all your time, so let's just cut it short. In the process of tweaking and changing and trying to perfect my live set, I realized that I kept slowly gravitating towards comfort. And I know that might sound like a bad thing at first, the whole stagnant water turns to poison or whatever it is, but I realized that in comfort, aka knowing something really well, that's what allowed me to truly perform and have fun because I was no longer thinking about the gear as gear, I was just playing it and I was just having fun. And the best part about this was that this was at no one's expense. Just because you're comfortable with a piece of gear doesn't mean that there isn't room to grow or get better at the way you handle that machine. And then I wonder if that means I'm just familiar with a piece of gear instead of comfortable. Alright, so I have 3 more things that I want to mention in no particular order, but the sun's coming down, so I'm going to have to head back to the hotel and do that in there. But before we get into that, I want to give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Skillshare. Oh man, it gets kind of chilly out here. So Skillshare, in case you're wondering, they have thousands of classes on creativity, productivity, business, whatever, you name it. Like they probably have a class or 2 on it. And remember last time I was mentioning that single piano chord that I knew? Well, with Skillshare, I've been taking advantage of the 2-month free trial that you get, which of course I have a link to down in the description below. And I'm happy to report back. I know so much more about the piano than I originally did. I know majority of like my major and minor scales now. I also found out that that single chord I knew was not at all the chord that I thought I was playing. It's just so cool to take this, this like idea that you hear in your head and just make it happen in real life. I feel like I'm literally just making music out of thin air whenever I'm in front of a keyboard now, which is insane. Like, it's just crazy. I never thought I would actually be able to play the piano. And in case you're wondering, I've been taking Mark DeHyde's classes on how to learn the piano. He breaks it down into these bite-sized chunks. That's actually been working really well for me because it's nice to have these checkpoints along the way where you can kind of just take a second, let it all soak in, and maybe even practice it a little bit. And another thing to mention is that Skillshare is actually super affordable, especially compared to taking classes in person, especially for the piano. Annual membership, it comes down to less than $10 a month. So with all that, make this decade the decade that you become the person that you wanted to be, and you can learn the skills that you've wanted to learn. And since Skillshare is sponsoring this video, use the link down in the description below and you can try a 2-month free trial of their premium membership. Oh, good morning. All right, so this first tip is know your samples. Know where they are, know how they sound, know what frequency range they take up, know everything you can about your samples. This was a mistake that I made when I performed. I recorded a bunch of loops and whatnot from the Deckard Stream as well as the Keyg, and I didn't realize how bass heavy they were until I heard them on a really loud system, and I was like, oh, this is no bueno. Luckily, the black box has a like a low pass, high pass kind of filter thing that I can utilize. So I was able to high pass majority of my samples, but that meant I can no longer low pass them. So it was kind of a bummer to not be able to use that. Otherwise, it was just so muddy. You know, plug your sampler into EQ8 in Ableton or something, and just see what frequency ranges they take up. Sorry, I've got a meeting to go to. I'm here at NAMM. We're getting ready for the show. Another thing to kind of tack onto this is this really simple thing that I always forget, and if you want your set to sound good, use good sounds. I know it sounds easier than, you know, it sounds very straightforward, but I often fall victim to this because I'll just go get a drum machine, whatever sounds are on there, I'm like, cool, I'll just use these and run with it. But the one thing we forget is that those sounds were meant to please a wide array of audiences, and that's not you. You're very unique. You like specific sounds. So take the time to make your drum machine yours by putting in your own samples. All right, gotta go. Oh man, it's been a long day. I can't wait to get to this. Tip number 2 is going to be label everything. Get some white labeling tape. I have a link to one that I've been using for a few years now. It hasn't left any residue on my gear yet, which is a big plus. And yeah, just label your cables, the knobs you always use, the ports, your everything, because this is really important, especially when using something really flexible like an Octatrack. Knowing what's where at a glance in a dark, foggy filled warehouse is super important, and is another great way to kind of take a step into that comfort realm that we were talking about earlier. Oh man, how pretty is this? So the last tip that I want to give to you is to just trust yourself. You got this. You got to give yourself a bit more credit, especially if you've been booked to play a show. They trust you. If you've been wanting to play a show or looking to get a show, subconsciously know that you can play a show. And if you've thought about it, that's just a sign that you're on your way to getting there. You know, you got this. Just trust yourself. You know your gear. You know the way you like to play. You got this. And, yeah, I'm going to just sit here and enjoy the rest of this. So I'll catch you on the next one. Share the love. Share the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Peace.